feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Shrimp Tank. And normally every week we bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs in cities all around the country. Tonight, we're actually bringing you some of the brightest and best financial advisors and business owners across the country to talk to you about what we're doing in our businesses. You know, right now with the coronavirus, the COVID-19, there are so many small businesses that have been affected across America. We saw more than 3 million people file a jobless claim last week. And so every week we want to do some sort of fireside chat for you to bring you some positive inspiration about what business owners are doing with marketing their business or retaining employees or keeping the company culture going when people are isolated in different places. And most importantly, keeping you on top of all the financial information for your businesses, because the hosts that are on here in the Shrimp Tank, not only are we on iHeartRadio, not only are we in cities all across the United States, we've got our guest on tonight from Harrisburg and Boca Raton and Seattle and Boston and Charleston and all over the country. We are literally changing the lives of, I like that, the Boca Raton on there, changing the lives of business owners. And our hosts are just amazing hosts. We don't get to highlight them enough. And so you're going to hear from our host tonight about what we're doing in our own businesses to not only survive during these times, but be able to thrive. And then we're going to share with you a little bit about what we can do to help your businesses grow. And then we're going to talk more about the Paycheck Protection Act and much, much more. I'm usually joined every week right here in Atlanta, but unfortunately, he's in Ball Ground, Georgia tonight. But my co-host, Lee Heisman, who joins me every single week. And Lee, we'll kick it off with you.
Thank you, Ted. Well, this is unique, but we're all getting used to it at this point. But I wanted to take a moment. And what we always talk about on the show is we always bring context. We bring credibility when we bring our guests on the show. And we have a great guest we're going to bring on a little bit. Mark Schmidt's going to be joining us. I see you there, Mark, on the screen. And what's nice is he was brought in by our Boca host, which we're going to start introducing our host. But Mark's in our backyard, Ted. He's in Noonan, Georgia. In Noonan, Georgia, Mark? I think so.
That's correct.
That's exactly right. So Jason's bringing the local Georgia people here just in time for us and the governor to put an official lockdown on our state as well. But I want to take a moment and I want to really focus on our host, because the Shrimp Tank family, which will be launching in Canada in the next few months once we open Earth again. Once Earth becomes open again, we'll be launching in Canada, of course, and Duncan McPherson will be spearheading that launch. But let's start with Jason. Jason Hill down in Boca Raton, and I want to go through our host. Jason, welcome to the show and being a co-host with us today. Tell us what's going on in Boca with you, with the show, and what impact you're making.
Yeah, so we were at 97 episodes, and we were about to hit 100 and have a big guest event. Unfortunately, we were not able to do that. And down here, it's an area that has a lot of people in their 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, you're seeing, all the flights being canceled from New York to South Florida currently. You're additionally seeing a lot of the businesses struggling. All the restaurant owners that have been on our show are having a big impact. And we're seeing a lot of love for the community down here. A lot of these business owners are, impactful in our community, and you're seeing a lot of people ordering takeout, seeing a lot of people buying gift cards and supporting them as best as they can, but it is hard. All the restaurants had to make a lot of layoffs currently, and we're hoping, with the new bill that was signed on Friday, that they could go out and maybe rehire a lot of them with the influence, of the SBA, of course. It's been hard on the parents, of course, in this community. A lot of people have people in their 70s, 80s that are being provided care. And that's a big issue down here, that the caregivers are canceling to go into people's homes. So we're seeing that aspect as well down here.
Well, Jason, that's why we have our special guest, Mark Schmidt, will be speaking later about all of those disaster relief packages that are going to help the businesses muscle through these next few questionable months so that we don't inhibit the growth of our economy. You guys, I've always wanted to say this for years. I've been hearing it, and I get a chance to introduce Brad Berger and Dan Whedon and simply say, Ted, the hay is in the barn. And
not
I get
yet.
to actually say, not yet. The hay will be in the barn.
Yeah,
The hay will be in the barn, but we just started shoveling hay.
Well, Dan and Brad, welcome from Seattle. Tell us, you're one of our longest standing hosts. Tell us what it's like there on the West Coast, the epicenter area of where all of this kind of started. Tell us.
Well, interestingly, I'll start. I'm working remotely, and we can talk a little bit about that later. I think many of us are. We were among the earlier states to put in provisions for, social distancing and as well as lockdowns, if you will, or stay-at-home orders. But I live in Bellevue, Washington, and where this kind of all began was about 20 miles north of here. And indeed, the very first, wave of deaths was from the Life Care Center, which is about 10 miles north of here. But I will share with you, even then, even with as much that was going on in those early days, I think that there was a bit of disbelief still with regard to how serious this was going to be. But as cases started to increase significantly in Seattle, I think one of I'm not normally a fan of the governor, I'll just share with you, but I have to honestly say a couple of weeks ago, I watched very intently as we had already started to implement processes in our business to deploy half of the team out of the office so that we could keep the office open. And our strategy there was if those individuals in the office became ill, we would take them out, we would sanitize the office, and we would bring the team that was out. And I'll give a plug for Dan Whedon, because years ago, he's a risk management specialist, and our firm hired him to come in and do a tabletop, kind of a disaster recovery plan. Now, we were expecting, volcano or tsunami. We were not expecting a pandemic, but nonetheless, we were able to execute that pretty flawlessly and get our team deployed. So shout out to Dan, just from a professional level. With regard to Seattle, we're doing fine, and we're kind of cooped up. I'm really kind of into week 3 of this, and of course, it looks like it's going to be another 7, or a total of 7, at least 4 more weeks. The governor hasn't said it yet, but he's not going to fall far behind what the federal government is going to suggest, I'm sure.
Excellent. And Dan, regarding your shows down there, how many shows have you guys done, just to give a little context of what Seattle's doing at the Tank family?
Well, we've been 3 years. In fact, we were like a little bit over 3 years. We were the 3rd city. Now, we do it a little bit different. We go every other week just because of the distance that I have to get to, and we have to work it out. So we've been going every other week. We've got 85 shows in the book, and we really focus on small business owners, entrepreneurs, middle market. We've had industries, we've had everything from cartoonists to manufacturing. We've had a lot of great shows. I do want to say that we did a couple of weeks ago keep the show going, though. We had our first Zoom podcast, which is up. And our next show, we're not going to miss any. Our next one will also be on Zoom. And I want to thank Luke and everybody that helped us put that together. But the last one that we did was a special one on COVID-19. I brought some colleagues in who are business experts from around the globe, and we put together a pretty good show. But yeah, we're really excited about what we've been doing here in the Seattle area and the great guests that we've had.
So
Awesome.
I have to make a comment, because Dan and I were the original social distancers, which is why we only have a show every other week.
It's very, very true on many levels. Speaking of social distancing, shortcutting it to Nathan. Nathan, missing your lovely co-host, but happy that you're here, of course. Tell us how it's going in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and what you see in the business community out there. You've been doing this for how long now, and hosting shows?
It was just over a year ago that we were down in Atlanta filming our kind of debut guest episode on your podcast. So the middle of April, we would have hit 1 year. We are just about at 40 episodes. So we've tried to do, our secret is we record every other week, but we try to do 2 episodes each time we record. That way we get set up and just try to hammer them out and take one afternoon and one day. But I also would like to point out, Lee, you did get the better of the 2 of us in Harrisburg. So you're welcome for that. But we've had a great experience and opportunity getting people. We've had a few startups that we kind of selectively brought on because they were kind of big risk takers. There was some young couples that were putting everything on the line, and it was just a great story to tell. But everything to some massive multi-national businesses that we've been able to have on the show. And it's been great. It's been great intel for us. What we did from there was we created an expert team that we work with for complete business planning. So mergers and acquisitions, business banking, attorneys, a law firm, a business coach, health brokerage group. And we've been using that right now as kind of the center for being able to push information out. So one thing we realized is everybody's getting flooded with information about the stimulus packages and all the stuff that's going on. But we've been trying to take all that information, make it concise, kind of hit the highlights, put our own spin on it for a newsletter that we're packaging together and then sending it out to our team and to our previous guests to try to just help clear some of the clutter that's out there. But we're going to have a big 1-year celebration later this month, but that's on hold at this point. Brad, as you mentioned, we were not as early as Seattle and as the Washington, but we have been one of the earlier stay-at-home mandated states in Pennsylvania. So we're absorbing that, but absorbing it well.
Hey, Lee, I just want to let you know I got us live on my Facebook page, and Mark Scribner, thanks for sharing that as well. So I at least got it live up here right now for the discussion. So we've got that live. I'm wondering, Nathan, in your area there, have you seen anything creative that a business owner has done to market their business? And maybe the guys from Seattle and Jason, have you seen one business owner that you thought, wow, this is a hell of an idea? You know, I want to share one when you guys are done, just thinking about what you could be sharing in your community, because this is the time you got to support a small business. You know, the large businesses, they have pile loads of cash. It's a small business owner that opened their business for their dreams, that they're just trying to survive right now. What have you seen there in Harrisburg that's been a pretty cool idea?
Well, I got to be honest. So our area is very heavy in the manufacturing space, and so it's tough to get creative in some of those areas if places can't go to work. We got a big construction presence in our area, which we've been fighting with the governor. So we're fortunate that we do have some very good. Probably all the cities do, but some libertarian/conservative policy groups who are nonprofits who try to affect change and be a voice for and alongside entrepreneurs. They've been helping to try to push that message along. Honestly, some of the most creative things I've seen have been right now just restaurants try to bring change and be a delivery, free delivery to the doors, creative marketing. They're doing different Facebook videos to try to get people to come in. But for them, it's not as much about creativity as it is, I think, just about pushing a message of still come out and support us while we're still in business. It's been tough for a lot of people in our area to get creative. And we're in a very conservative area. Central Pennsylvania is extremely conservative. So I think we're looking for outside of the box type thinking. And our firm, we've tried to think outside of the box, and we have to be sensitive on pushing the envelope with some things because of our area.
And I want to make sure, guys, we do hit our other hosts real quick, which start with you, Eric, real quick.
Let's do that, and we'll come back to the roundtable on this.
Yep. Eric Elkins, Charleston, talk to us.
Hey guys, it's really a pleasure to be here. It's at least, unfortunately, not under these circumstances, but so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and basically the area that I live in is being really affected because of tourism, as well as the restaurants, the culinary. This is like a culinary mecca, and so the restaurants are just getting devastated. You would think that in my area that there's nothing else being hurt other than restaurants and Boeing. With Washington being obviously the big hub for Boeing, Charleston is also the East Coast hub for Boeing. So we're really being Boeing was already taking a hit, and now it's even more, especially with all the economy that they produce in our city and around us. So. It's just, the one thing that the silver lining that I have noticed through this and working on my business, which is on the financial insurance side, is how I've been able to do so much proactive planning and getting organized and seeing clients and updating client information and reviewing old clients. So, you know, for me, I've just been able to pick up a lot of things that I just haven't had the time to do. So, you know, I'm trying to see the light there, because not many people are that interested in sitting down and talking. But one of the things I'll mention that I am putting together is I have one of our guests on the Shrimp Tank. Our first guest is a guy named John Rosso, who's considered the #1 Sandler sales coach in the country. We're doing a webinar, and I'm going to provide that out to the Shrimp Tank guests as well as my clients and folks. And it's really talking about how to sell and how to work in a virtual environment, because it's such a different strategy. So that's something that we're going to do in the next week or two. But unfortunately, we've done 13 shows, and we have scheduled, I think, 20 for this year. And it kind of got put on hold, obviously, because of the virus. But that's kind of the update, Lee, for us.
No, it's good. And Mark in Boston, our last one, because we want to bring Mark Schmidt in, guys, our special guest, who will be providing input of where we go forward. You know, we don't want to look to see where we go back and make second guesses. We want to talk today about where we go forward and what we do, and take some control of our actions. But before we get to Mark Schmidt, Scribner, tell us about Boston. How many shows? How's it going up there?
So we're probably I think we're the newest addition to the Shrimp Tank. Maybe just a tick shy of 10 or 11 right now. We had Ted was going to be a guest host with us. Would have been March 25th. We had to reschedule that, but we had a great VC guy, some really interesting people, and it's good. Ted's been able to come around. I don't know if he's done it with other cities, but you know, having him when he's around to do those shows has been pretty fun.
It's only because you have him a little bit. If you had to do it every week, it's not that fun, just to be clear.
That's true. Maybe that's why it comes to me, because you're driving crazy back there.
Precisely.
Lee, we might need to play a game of Social Feud tonight, or what?
I think you're exactly right. We're the Brady Bunch, because it looks like that. It's like right down. I don't know who's there.
I won't get too much into like the virus stuff per se, but the city's really pretty much locked down for a while. I mean, I live in downtown Boston, and some of the stores have gone as far as actually boarding up, like putting plywood over their storefronts for the fear of like looting. So when I have to go into the office just to collect mail and see if there's checks there, it's a heavy police presence. It almost feels like it's going to be National Guard level pretty soon. So it's unnerving for sure being in the city. Like that movie I Am Legend, there's just literally nobody in the city except for me and a dog and a zombie. But so what we've been doing, definitely through the Shrimp Tank real quickly, is we've been cross-connecting guests and trying to touch base with them off the show, see if there's any resources that we have that we can help them out with. And we're also in the financial services industry, and this is unfortunately where I think we get to shine, because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of education, a lot of hand-holding, a lot of psychology. I mean, all the tricks of the trade that you use on a daily basis to communicate with people, it's just very, very supercharged across the board. So there's a lot of restaurants, everything that you can imagine is being affected and impacted here. But, you know, we're talking to clients right now, trying to give them resources, like potentially looking at getting some cash that could be available for small business loans and things like that. So
that's a good segue. Yeah, Mark, that's a perfect segue into our guest today. I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, so that is a good segue.
No, it's a perfect segue, and I want to thank Jason Hill. Jason, you brought Mark Schmidt onto the show, and Mark, if you don't mind taking a moment, it's a perfect segue, guys. We all know what's happening in our country, let alone the world today, and I'm not dismissing any and all of the stories that we all have about, but there's two ways that you can look at things. You look at things, and I've always said this, Ted, and Ted has to hear me, is use an archery logo. Have you ever seen where you shoot your archery into, and you have the real small, bullet hole in the middle, and then you have the much larger space around the outside. And the little small hole is the area that you can control and influence, right? The larger space around the outside, you have no influence over. You watch the news and you feel helpless. So what I want to focus on today, and with everyone concurring, is the areas that we can control, the areas that we can influence. And that's why we're fortunate to have Mark Schmidt on the on the program so that he can discuss these are the actions you as a business owner, let alone not just us, but all of our listeners can take for the Payroll Protection Act and all of the things, Mark, that you're going to speak about. So please, Mark, take a moment, introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are, why we should listen to you, even if you have a Yankees logo in the background, and what our business owners should do.
I'll be happy to. Thank you. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Fundex Solutions Group, which is a non-bank SBA lender. There aren't many of them in the country, but we are one of them. Prior to Fundex Solutions Group, I was with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation for 33 years as a bank supervisor. So I can sympathize with what the government is going through to develop these emergency programs, because I was there when we developed these programs last time, the TARP and that sort of thing. I'm happy to be on the other side of the desk now and hopefully be able to help out a number of small businesses. And I'll talk primarily about the CARES Act. And this is the law that passed late last week. The President signed it on Saturday. There are some very important provisions in here for small business dealing with SBA loans, as indicated prior. The first one is not the Paycheck Protection Act, but let me very briefly explain. There is another provision in there that's almost as important as far as I'm concerned from a longer term perspective. If you have an existing SBA loan, and you know, it's a small percentage of businesses that actually have an SBA loan, but still a large number. And the government is going to pay the next 6 payments on those loans. So there's relief for companies, small businesses that have an SBA loan today. But perhaps even more importantly, it also provides that for any SBA loan, and we're not talking about the Paycheck Protection Act now, but any other SBA loan that's taken out in the next 6 months will have the first 6 payments picked up by the SBA or by the government. So that's a very important to be thinking longer term. Paycheck protection is designed to help small businesses in the shorter term to retain their employees. But this provision could be critical for a lot of businesses to get back up and running on longer term, larger amounts, and be payments made by the government for 6 months. So that's one that people aren't talking about a lot, but that's out there and that's very important. The Paycheck Protection Program is the one that you're seeing most of the press about. That's the one that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, I think he announced last Friday or last week that the program would be up and running by the end of this week. It would be a simple process, and that money would be available on a same-day basis. I'm not 100% convinced it's going to be quite that simple or quite that fast. But let me caveat that the SBA and Treasury haven't even issued the final regulations yet. Okay, we're Wednesday night, supposed to be up and running Friday morning. We don't have the final guidance yet. If we get that in the morning, rest assured all the lenders like our company will be working very hard to get up and running, as will all the other SBA lenders out there. The challenges are the same things that you see here. Everybody's working remote, right? So the banks that are trying to get ready, they're working remote. The SBA, the Treasury, a lot of their employees are working remote. They're trying to put the program together. And so it's a huge, huge undertaking for the SBA. I sympathize with them. I can understand why they want to get it right, but you know, there may be some delays. But the Paycheck Protection Program is designed to assist small businesses to keep workers employed. Okay, and the way they do that, or the way the legislation is designed to do that, is to basically lend to a small business 2.5 times average monthly payroll expenses, based on your last calendar year, and there are some exceptions to that. So basically, you go in and you apply for a loan 2.5 times your monthly payroll expenses from last year. That loan is 0.5%, virtually no interest, no collateral, no personal guarantee, a $10 million max. Although again, it's the lesser of 2.5 times your monthly payroll or 10 million. So not a lot of companies will qualify for 10 million, but it's designed to cover payroll expenses. So the amount that's loaned is, as I said, the average payroll expense. But what's important is the way the government helps you is not only through a low interest loan, but at the end of the program, or at the end of 8 weeks from the time you get your money, you can apply to have that loan forgiven in a certain amount, in a certain percentage. So basically, the government is offering low interest, forgivable loans to small businesses as long as the funds are used for the purpose intended, which is primarily payroll. But it's a little interesting there because the loan amount is calculated solely based off your payroll. And this is all defined in the regulation. There's information.
And Mark, a question for the people watching tonight. My understanding was that it wasn't just payroll. It included things like retirement benefits and other things like that. Is it more than just payroll in that calculation, or is it purely
That's what I was just going to get to. It's payroll writ large, right? It's basically most everything that you think of that's related to payroll. So it's payroll. It can be tips. It can be vacation pay. It's contributions to retirement accounts and some taxes. So certainly the retirement benefits, all those things, but still very closely related to payroll. And what's interesting is that's the base, the borrowing base. That's the amount you can base, but the use of funds is a little different. So you may be borrowing $100,000 based on your payroll, but you can actually use the funds for more than just payroll. You can use that payroll, use it for interest on a mortgage loan, you can use it for rent, and you can use it for utilities. So basically payroll and occupancy, if you look at it that way. So there's two different lists. Here's the list. This is payroll. This was the borrowing base. And there's another list of use of funds. And what you do is you come in at the end, you say, all right, if you can confirm that I did use the money for these qualified things, that the loan is forgiven in the amount of the use of the. So you have 2.5 times payroll minus payroll plus occupancy. Most borrowers, if they do it right, will be able to have the entire loan forgiven.
Mark, I wanted to ask
Hey,
another
Mark.
question to hear while you're going through this, that certainly today for a lot of people who are watching, we're in the gig economy and you have a lot of people that are single member LLCs or they're a 1099 independent contractor. Do they also qualify for this? And if so, because technically they may not be on payroll, do they qualify off of their net income, off of their gross income?
Well, once again, not all the specific details are out there, but we do know that sole proprietors, independent contractors, DBAs all qualify. So they made a very broad definition. And basically, the guidance we have so far is it will be basically the net income of the sole proprietor or the gig economy worker. So stay tuned for a little more on that.
Mark, can I just interject? I believe that's also capped, right, for employees or the individuals that fit in this category at $100,000. So you can only include up to that amount in the calculation.
That's right. That's exactly right. So there are some things that you deduct, and that's the any payment over 100,000. A couple other things. Payroll taxes don't come in there, and you also deduct any payments made to non-U.S. residents. So if on your payroll you have somebody that's overseas, that's not included in the calculation. So basically, the high earners and the non-U.S. residents are excluded from that calculation as to how much you can borrow.
Mark, do you have any sense that, one of the things that I know a lot of the business owners I've talked to on the ground, that it feels like it's going to be application Friday here and it's going to be like a slot machine. Do you have any sense whether this $350 billion is going to be associated to NAICS codes or SIT codes, or it's basically going to be on a first come, first served basis? So it's like too late, so sorry if you don't get your applications in.
Well, in general, these programs are first come, first served, right? Congress has $49 billion, okay? But Mnuchin and the president are both on record as saying, if we need more, we'll go back to Congress. And I fully expect they'd be able to bump it up if they have to. But yeah, Application Friday is going to be very interesting because, you know, there's 30 million small businesses in this country. And
Can I ask a question, Mark?
yes,
Dan Whedon here from Seattle, and we, I know I've seen it, just a ton of things. We've all seen them in our inbox. How does this work in conjunction with the SBA's EIDL loan? Can you do both? Can you talk a little bit about that?
you can do both. Yes, absolutely. The amount of the loan is basically payroll plus an EIDL loan if you have it. And EIDL is Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That's a program that the SBA administers itself. Okay, this is not in the CARES Act. This is nothing new. The disaster loan program's been out there a long time. They usually use it for hurricanes, other disasters, wherever a disaster area or disaster declaration has been made. So in this particular case, this is the first time we've had a nationwide disaster declaration. Everybody, every business in the country is eligible for an EIDL loan if they have been economically injured. And so you can go on to the SBA website and apply there. That you don't go to a bank or private lender. All of the disaster loans are administered directly through SBA through their website. So yes, this is, you can do both, but you can't use it for the same purpose. Okay, so you have to show that you use the EIDL loan maybe to replace a piece of equipment or something. You can't use it for both. So there's some paperwork involved. Okay.
Hey, Mark, I got a quick question. So you being on the other end of these transactions quite frequently, our listeners, what would be kind of the dream lineup for their team to get something like this done? Is it, I would think, leveraging in their accountant, a bookkeeper, or a lawyer? Like, we might get into this further, but I'm just curious, like, how do people get their act together to actually execute on this?
Well, that's a really good question. And even better, since I'm a part owner of a small business myself, and we're scrambling to do this very same thing. I own 30% of an HVAC company out in Colorado. It looked like it's going to be real complicated. Okay, the SBA is trying to make it simple for the borrowers. The actual application form is already on the web. Paperwork, you basically need to prove your payroll, right? Your average payroll for last year. And a lot of times, most people haven't filed their taxes, right? And they're not going to anytime soon because they line for filing. So you're probably going to look at payroll tax information. There's a specific form for payroll tax that you file, most companies anyway. That's a really good place to start. Have your accountants, bookkeepers, or if you do it yourself, pull down your payroll tax filings, and that probably is again a very good start. But keep in mind, over 100,000 isn't included. The other thing you're going to need to supply is if you have affiliates. Affiliates are considered in the definition of what a small business is, and 500 employees is the cutoff. So if you have affiliates, generally the SBA combines those affiliates to
Like
see
a franchise.
if you have 500. And they've made an exception in the law for NAICS Code 72, which is accommodations and restaurants. So if you've got a group of restaurants and have 1,000 employees, as long as you don't have more than 500 in one place, you can apply and replace payroll for all the employees. Now, the forgiveness amount is based on 8 weeks, right? And the question I've had is, it looks like this thing's going to last longer than 8 weeks, right? And I have to keep the people on the payroll until June 30th in order to get loan forgiveness. So you do the math, and okay, I'm going to have to be out of pocket to keep them on until June 30th if I'm only going to get 8 weeks of forgiveness. That's the part where I really think Treasurer and Congress will come back in with more money if they need it. When they passed the law, they're thinking 8 weeks would be plenty, right? it's kind of looking like maybe it won't be now. And they're already on Capitol Hill talking about, phase 4. And I fully expect, I know this is in part of that discussion.
Mark, real quick question, guys. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
Can you hear me on my side?
We
My
do
audio
hear you.
coming? Okay, perfect. Mark, what about all these restaurants that have already made major layoffs? Like down here in West Palm, I heard one person laid off 580 people. They had 17 restaurants. It's pretty late in the game for them to rehire everybody. Those people have already filed for unemployment.
Yep.
Of course, this is designed to probably stimulate them to rehire, but they may look at this as 8 weeks. It's not worth it. So what should these business owners that own restaurants and bars do in these situations, your belief?
I would stay tuned for the guidance that's supposed to be out in the next day or two. Okay.
Okay.
There's a provision in the law that basically the way it reads is if you laid anybody off between February 15th and 30 days after the law was passed, so you got the period before and after the law was passed, so you got another 25 days or so. If you had a layoff in that time frame, if you bring them back by June 30th, there's no reduction in your loan forgiveness.
Sure.
There's going to be a way to do that, to bring them back onto the payroll and get a loan for that, to pay them, and then have the loan forgiven. But let's wait and see what the specific requirements are.
Sure.
That's a
And
real.
what about the $10,000 grant? You're seeing YouTube videos all over the internet saying, go ahead for the disaster loan, 10,000 in 3 business days. You're going to get it. No questions asked, even if you're denied. And these videos are getting hundreds of thousands of views. And you have insurance agents, real estate agents that maybe just got into the business and they were just starting to get going and they can't really be in the business because it's all face to face. And they have little income to show, but they're of course applying for $10,000. Will they actually get this $10,000 and get to keep it? You're going to get it. No questions.
No. Yes and no. Okay. The emergency idle loan is in the CARES Act. It's $10,000. It's exactly right. But if you get an emergency idle loan for $10,000, you can still get a PPP loan, but they will reduce the loan forgiveness by $10,000. So if you're going to do a PPP and you're not desperate for that $10,000 cash right now, you don't need both processes, right? Because you're going to get it one way or the other. So my thought is if you're desperate for $10,000 today, you could go ahead and get it, but it will reduce the free money, if you will, or the free loan through the Paycheck protection program. So, I saw a lot of the same ads. People, get out there, get it right now. There's only so much and you won't get it after a certain date. But the bottom line is you can still basically get the same thing through Paycheck protection, because if you got that emergency idle, you're going to lose some of your forgiveness here up to the amount of the idle loan.
Hey, for everyone who's watching tonight, I just wanted to chime in and let you know in the chat box, I put in the link, the covid19relief.sba.gov, where you can go. And I think it took me like 8 minutes to fill out the online application. It's pretty easy to do it.
Guys, I want to also mention something, and Mark, you can confirm this or not. You have that, Ted, the link you put in there is specifically for the SBA, very separate, as Mark said, than the payroll protection plan. But Mark, if I'm incorrect, some of the good news, and as you can tell, the glass is always half full to me. That's the way I always want to live my life. So the good news with the payroll protection plan, and Mark, please confirm, is that your gatekeeper, and I think the government has made your banks the gatekeeper. So the amount of red tape, the amount of nonsense that you sometimes may have had to go through to get SBA loans or to go through the government is being gate kept by your bankers. So I've always said, Ted, for years that most business owners forget one of the most important relationships isn't just their clients or their employees, it's their bank. And your bank should be leading the charge. And if they're not leading the charge for you, you need to be getting in touch with them. We've received a litany of information from the multiple banks that we use. Do your due diligence before Friday. Grab your IRS Form 941s. Grab your quarterly federal income tax returns for your payroll. Start looking at all your utility bills. Start downloading your utility bills for the past year. Download your rental payments that you've made. Try to prepare so as the line opens. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Masters, but you stand with your chair behind a velvet rope and there's no running allowed. and you all wait in turn until they open the velvet rope, and you then have to walk very fast to put your chairs down. And then your seat is reserved for the masters for that entire day. And that's what Friday is going to feel like, if Friday is the day mark. Because take one step back, if you did the SBA loan on Monday this week, you filled out physical paperwork and you sent it in. And then on Tuesday, they reset the entire system, Mark, if I'm incorrect, and they went to the online system. So be flexible, be liquid, be ready to pivot, but be ready. Mark, is that accurate, or would you concur?
Well, the idle link has been up there since the CARES Act, but there's the disaster loan link has been there a long time.
Yep.
The disasterloan.sba.gov. Now, come Friday, yes, your relationship with your bank is important, but not all of them are SBA lenders. All right, there are 8,000 or so banks and credit unions in the country. 1,800 of them are qualified SBA lenders. Now, the SBA and Treasury have opened up the door and said any of those other 6,000 that want to participate have to apply to Treasury, and that's going to take some time. So even those additional banks that want to participate probably won't be up and running by Friday, almost definitely won't be up and running by Friday. I would also say there are a number of banks that aren't interested in the program because of the economics. The regulation says that, or the law says, made us believe that the loans would be at 4%. But the guidance that has come out said the loans will be 0.5%. That changes the equation for a lot of lenders, and a lot of them have said, "Wait a minute, can we make money doing this?" And they're doing that. They're doing that calculus as we speak to figure out whether they want to participate. But I know some friends in the business that their banks have said we're not going to do it. The other 1,800, I think most of them will. But that just means the line's going to be even longer at those lenders that participate. So,
Mark, can I follow up too on Lee's? So what are the one or two things the average person should look for in a bank? Like here in Boston, it's the big box stores like the Citizens, the Bank of America. And I know that your firm's going to be doing that, but is there one or two things? And I have a relationship, obviously, as a business person with my banker, but not everyone does.
yeah, I would, if you do have a relationship with your bank, start there. See if they do it. If they don't, they may have already arranged with a company like ours or somebody else to do it for them, or have a referral program. Now, I assume most small businesses do have a bank relationship, so that's a good place to start. Otherwise, the internet has a lot of information right now about who is offering these loans. I think the large banks are all participating, and I'm sure they will be developing some pretty good online portals. We're doing that. All of our competitors are doing that. But we do have this one handicap, which is we don't have all the guidelines yet. So we don't even know exactly what has to be compiled. The law itself makes it sound like it's very simple, but and that the lenders could rely on certifications from the borrower. Now, if we're able to do that, our job is pretty simple, right? If you give me your basic documents, you certify that they're correct, you certify that your payroll expense was X, it's pretty easy for me to figure out. Now, if SBA turns around and they're starting to do this, at least they did in the initial guidance, saying that the lender now has to verify those documents and verify that information. We're waiting for them to clarify what verify means. That could be a speed bump for everybody if the SBA and Treasury turn the law on its head, basically, and say, now it's the lender's responsibility. And we could still move faster than the government, but if you're going to put that kind of responsibility and risk on the banking industry, it's going to slow them down. I think they got a couple of days to get this right. I know there's a lot of folks working on that, but that's one of my concerns as with any government program. Will they get it right in the end?
credit unions offer these too?
Yeah,
They do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a smaller percentage of credit unions that do SBA lending, but they are certainly able to if they want to.
Is there any difference between, you started your conversation off as being a non-bank bank, but is there any advantage for our listeners out there to look at the kind of entity of a bank, or is it just all looking at the government program?
I don't think there's a huge advantage. Find one that's got capacity and can do it. There are only 14 non-bank SBA lenders. SBA issued 14 licenses about 15 years ago and quit issuing them. Why? I don't know, but they did. So there's 14 out there. We're one of the 14, and we are we're supervised by the SBA. We follow all the same rules, have all the same responsibilities. So really no difference. You find somebody that has the authority from SBA. They're all any and all of them can offer this program.
Mark, what is the loan amount that they're maxing out on the small business loan? What is the amount that a company can actually get up to?
Well, 10 million is the max on the Paycheck Protection Program, but again, it's the lesser of 10 million or 2.5 times your monthly payroll expense.
Okay, so but I thought there was the separate piece regarding the SBA loan. I thought that's where you go to the bank.
The SBA loan is $2 million. I could be wrong, but I think it's
the emergency
non-collateralized on the emergency ones up to 200,000, and then 2 million is the most you can get. And I thought the rate was like 3.25, but I could be wrong. It was somewhere in that ballpark.
You're close. You're very close. 3.75 is the rate. 2 million is the maximum, and anything over 25,000 requires collateral. Now that's on the emergency loan. That's the one that you get through the SBA through their website. So don't get those criteria
and
protection.
And do you know what kind of qualifications you have to do to get the up to 2 million? I mean, do you know what they're looking for?
They're looking for economic injury. You have to prove that you have an economic injury to that extent, whether that was, and it has to be in this case caused by COVID-19.
Gotcha.
So loss of revenue
Gotcha.
is a typical one.
Ted, you live your life getting close, so it makes sense. We don't expect you to be precise, just close.
It's going to be huge, huge.
Ted's life is like horseshoes. He doesn't ever have to really win. He just needs to get close. So Ted, wrap us up. We wanted, that's exactly right. Wrap us up, Ted, if you want to, on our social media, have a little fun. Mark, thank you for making us all depressed and coming on the show and telling us exactly how much hard work we're going to have to get. They're just not giving us free money. We actually have to work for it.
It's the government, folks. I can't help it.
Fair. But on a serious note, Mark, I will admit, and I've seen a lot of positive things. Again, sorry, Nathan, it's the half glass full, or the glass half full. I've seen a lot of compliments about that $2 trillion package and the momentum and what they put out there. So in this time of need, I've seen everybody step up, and we love the direction that we're moving in. So, if it wasn't for this, it wouldn't be awesome. And Dan, you're exactly right. Mark Schmidt, thank you so much for joining us tonight. No one's holding against you except Scribner from Boston, your Yankees picture back there. But Ted, if you want to wrap us up with a little social feud.
Thanks, Mark, for doing this tonight. And we'll probably do more of these. These fireside type chats, I think, are big. Every small business owner in America is probably facing some trickle down effect in one way, shape, or form, some more directly impacted and others indirectly impacted. And I always felt that in every community, it's the backs on small business owners where most of the jobs are built. So anything you can do in your local community to support your local business owners are going to make, our country as strong as it can be. I want to do a quick go around to everybody, and maybe is there one marketing idea or something you've just seen in your community that you thought, wow, this was cool, or something you've done in your business and go around on here? And I saw Jason had raised his hand before. Jason, what's one thing you've seen that's done pretty cool down in Boca?
Yeah, so on a positive note, we saw, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. On a positive note, we saw a restaurant turn into a grocery store. She took, everything she had from all her connections, and she got all the necessities, and she was doing deliveries to all the condos in Boca. So it was pretty awesome to see her just think outside the box We also saw a clothing factory start making masks and selling them to the hospitals. You saw somebody in the promotional product business who got clobbered. His clientele was professional sports and college universities, and he turned around and is creating sanitation stations throughout major cities. We've seen gym owners doing online courses, which are pretty unique, and having everyone join online and still do the classes. We've seen motivational speakers switching to courses where, hear from them every single day through this process. So it's been really unique to see all our business owners kind of turn the corner and just come up with positive ideas, not just sit down and wait for things to occur.
Jason, let me interrupt and jump in before Dan Whedon throws his ideas. Guys, as leaders in the community, the shows you're hosting, your guests that you know, they do look to you because you get an opportunity, and all of our hosts here on the show get an opportunity to sit around the leaders in your community. And you're exactly right, Jason. Those handful of people that you mentioned, they're really pivoting, right? Being liquid, pivoting is one of the successes of entrepreneurship. But I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there, I know them intimately, who have sometimes, and I can see sometimes people get paralyzed by fear, whether it be entrepreneurs, employees, and that paralysis, analysis paralysis by fear. I think it's our job, guys, as much as we talk about the family of the tank here and who we've interviewed, our job is also to help give these inspirational stories to other business leaders and to help them try to think outside the box. I'll give a small example. We have a client of ours that does home restoration, home renovations, and they were panicking because, they have to come into people's homes. And I said, well, let me take a moment with you. I'm going to treat this, and Ted, I use this example all the time. You remember, guys, years ago, Steven Spielberg? With my staff of millennials, they don't know who I'm talking about, right? Maybe with a recent one. But they used to ask Steven Spielberg years ago, hey, how do you know how to make such great movies? Jaws, Close Encounters, E.T., every movie you make, everybody loves. How do you know to make movies what everybody loves? And Steven said, I don't make movies for others. I just make movies that I like. So I tend to run my business and operate how I work with clients of the things that I like. And when one of my clients, and I think you know them, Ted, over at Archer, said, hey, we're having difficulty with people letting us in their homes. I said, well, why don't you offer them, this was before the stay-at-home order, be clear, here in Georgia, it just happened today. But I said, why don't you offer them to go to the local park? Why don't you contact your people that you're going to their homes? The weather's been great in Georgia for the past month. I said, why don't you show them the 3 closest parks? Why don't you say, we're going to come to your house for these 2 hours. Here's the 3 closest parks in your area. Why don't you go take a day with your family? We're going to come do our renovations. We'll leave when we're done, and we'll make sure and wait in the driveway until you confirm the work has been done. So I was just trying to think outside the box with business owners who sometimes get a little paralyzed. And he said, oh my God, that's a great idea. And he kind of took it and modified it to his own level of success. But operationally, sometimes it's easier, guys, when we're out there interviewing CEOs and we get to know their business, we can give guidance and structure and help unparalyze them to action of accommodating in this very challenging world. So just a reminder for you guys as you lead your communities, and especially the leaders that you work with. Dan, I interrupted you. You wanted to make a comment.
If I was Ted, I'd get used to you interrupting me. So I'm just going to go ahead and move right ahead here.
Thank you, Dan.
So mine's fairly simple, and it's not only a client, but a guest that Brad and I had on, Peter Crabtree of Crabtree Brands. Peter has 3 businesses all in the same building. Number one is he has a very nice family restaurant, which is closed and has been closed. He has a great little bistro where he manufactures his own chocolate. It's fantastic. That's closed. And then he's got the liquor store, which is open. Well, today's my wife's birthday. And so between my daughters and I, what we did is we contacted Chocmo, and they got a whole bunch of chocolates together. And then I got paid for online. And then I called the liquor store, High Spirits, and said, I got to get some wine. I want to get some things. They said, here's what we're going to do. We know you. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to package this all together for you. I paid for everything in advance. She said, when you pull up into the driving lot, call me. So I called them, and they walked out. I popped my trunk, never got out of the car, popped my trunk. They put it in the back, so it didn't even go in the passenger side. Closed the trunk, said goodbye, and I'm off. So we were able to get a nice present and get them some revenue and get them some recognition. And by the way, for all of you, High Spirits and I are holding a virtual happy hour this Friday. Going to have a bartender, a mixologist, showing us how to make it dark and stormy. You're all welcome to join us. I'll send you the link.
You can do the
if you want to
application.
join-
Yeah, you do
What's
the
that?
applications on Friday too.
Yes, you can after you're done. And by the way, the cool thing about the virtual happy hour, you bring your own glass and no designated drivers needed.
I saw this, Dan. I saw this.
Lee, I wanted to tell you the best thing I've seen in Atlanta here is I supported a local guy named Nate Hibble. He owns 6 restaurants called Gusto with an exclamation point on it. Really nice owner, former NFL player, opened up his dream of running restaurants. He's been doing dining bonds. So what he's been telling people is you give me $100 today and let me keep my business afloat. I'll give you a $150 gift card in 6 months. And he calls them dining bonds. And it may be an idea to share with the local restaurant owner so they can raise some short-term cash and then reward those people with a little bit of an extra credit 6 months from now in the restaurant. He's doing great with it. He raised 40 grand this last month and he's going to be able to keep his business afloat. And yeah, he might take a nick and profit down the road, but you know what? It's a damn good idea.
Yeah, I was going to mention that I received something today from 425 Media, which is a tough business to be in. They produce local magazines that highlight particular areas. 425 is the area code for the east side of Bellevue and on the other side of the lake from Seattle. And they also have other Puget Sound magazine and those sorts of things. And they came out with a really unique idea. They pitched it to me today, which was, hey, is there a constituency out there that you as a business owner or financial planning firm would like to advertise to? And they're offering what's called a buy one, give one, which is if we subscribe and do an ad, they're going to give an ad to a deserving smaller business who may not have the opportunity to advertise but wants to get their message out there. So I thought that was a pretty good idea to kind of pay it forward where those businesses perhaps that aren't struggling that have a message to get out and have the capability could help another business who's struggling.
Awesome. Well, that's the way, guys, to end on a high note. Let's do a Costanza. We'll end on a high note, of course. Ted, I thought this was a wonderful first virtual show for all the hosts. Great to see everybody. Mark Schmidt, thank you so much for joining and taking your time, of course. Dan Whedon, Brad Berger out of Seattle, Jason Hill, superstar as usual, Nathan and Bowden, Harrisburg, Scribner, Elkins, Charleston, Scribner out of Boston, Ted Jenkin. I miss you, buddy. I don't get a chance to spend time with you. Guys, listen, thank you so much. We're going to do every Wednesday. We're going to do a fireside chat. We recommend each of our cities kind of do the same things, guys. Get this on your schedule. Ted and I are going to bring some business owners on next Wednesday. And, you know, the scope of who you can bring on now is a lot easier than making people fly to your studio. So we can pretty much bring anybody on that we want. Guys, thank you so much. You're watching the Shrimp Tank and our first fireside chat.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the